Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Grand Prix before the Grand Prix. You're watching Sim Experience South Africa Formula 1 Saturdays. I'm your commentator, Jan Karunas, and I'll be running you through today's action here at Franchorchamp near Stavelot, Belgium. The F1 break is finally over. We've all had a chance to catch up with our to-do list. The sim racing cockpits are tuned, adjusted and ready to go, and the drivers have all been itching to get going with this weekend's race. Spa is one of the most iconic races on the F1 calendar, featuring a corner that we all love and fear, Eau Rouge. With speeds hitting 351 km an hour, Spa is one of the fastest circuits on their calendar. 19 turns and an elevation change of 102.2 meters, this track is set up for some epic races. Now, having a quick look at our weather, 14 degrees Celsius for the air, it's nice and cool, so the engines are going to be running very efficiently. And then 21 degrees Celsius for the track itself. So while it's nice and cool and will keep the tire temperatures in check, it might be difficult to switch on those harder compounds. Now we'll go over to Mornay de Prix, who will be taking us through a lap of Spa and just show how difficult this track can really be.
Alright, welcome everyone for a lap around Spa. Heading down to our first corner, La Source, very sharp right hand turn. Getting a nice exit here, it's all about the exits for a nice run down the straight. Heading down towards one of the most famous corners, Eau Rouge, one of the fastest corners of the circuit. Flat out there, minimize the steering angle to get a nice exit onto the Kemmel straight. Opening up DRS, special place for Max Verstappen, he always has the glow of orange on the banks over here on the left. Alright, hard braking into the right hander of Lecombe. Setting up for Malmedy, maximizing the road over here using the curb on the left to get in a nice exit. Downhill braking, very easy to lock up the front over here, keep a tight line. Then going through the left hander over here, nice wide line onto the curb, maximizing your exit. Then comes Prix, one of the fastest and coolest corners on the circuit, almost flat out here in 7th gear, using all the road available. And then we head to the right hander. You want to try and stay in the middle of the track over here just to maximize your exit again, using all of the track onto the curbs. Going through the right hander of Stavelot, again maximizing your exit. This is a very important corner. These F1 cars are flat out through here, getting a nice run down the straight. And we go along, approaching Blanchimont, flat out through here, over 300 km an hour. And then towards the old bus stop, it's now called the chicane. Bumpy braking zone over here into the right hander off camber. Be careful you don't lose the rear. Going through the left hander, last corner, opening up DRS and sprinting to the finish. And that's a lap at Spa.
Thank you so much for that lap, Mornay. And it's always very interesting to see what the different approaches is for the tracks that we race on. So unfortunately the weather has messed around with some of our broadcasting equipment, and unfortunately we're only joining near the end of practice. I see we've got quite a few drivers in the 143, so that's just something I want to point out before we end the session, but it's already very fast times coming from these drivers. And it's going to be an exciting qualifying session to see if they can actually reach these times again. And then come the race, it's always going to be interesting to see what kind of race pace are these drivers going to be able to maintain, while also racing around other competitors and trying to manage things like fuel loads and tire degradation. Just a quick shout out, if you are on the YouTube channel, please leave us a comment. Who are you supporting, who are you shouting for, and we'll definitely see if we can get that up on stream. But in the meantime, sit back and relax. After the session we'll quickly go to an advertisement break, and then we will get going with qualifying, which is bound to be interesting. It's going to be a case of fastest tire in qualifying is going to be used at the start of the race. So there is an element of strategy involved here, and I can't imagine that some of the drivers are just going to whack on some of the softer compound tires and then have to deal with that in the first stint of their race. But we will see what's going to happen. and it is going to be fascinating to say the least. Also, just a note, we do have most of the drivers here. I think some of the drivers might not have set a valid time yet, because we do only have 13 of them on the timing tower at the moment. But we will have a few more once the sessions get underway. If you do want to get involved with events like this, we have a lot of league racing at Sim Experience South Africa, and this is probably the one event that I'm the happiest about is the Formula 1 Saturdays. But we do have other things like Mazda MX-5 racing, Formula 3 racing, for those of you that might not want to deal with things like ERS management with these larger cars. So that might also be some fun racing. So head on over to the Discord link in the description and you can see where to get involved from there. For now, we're just waiting for the drivers to come back in from the track, and then the session will move on over to qualifying. So we're just waiting for the track to clear, and then we will be ready to get going. Also have a few of our kind of familiar names sitting out here at the moment. We've got Marius Skuman, who to me is a very familiar name, but to some of you might not be. And then we've got Gideon Jonkers. We've been seeing him quite a bit in previous races. Of course, Raymond Duggan, Dennis Mitchell. Dennis, one of the star drivers from the Australian V8 series that we ran a bit earlier during the year. And then Joshua van Rensburg, a bit of a newer name. And then Corné Breed is the resident downforce specialist, as far as I can recall. Gerard Pretorius, Gert Snijman. We had a bit of an issue with his name in earlier broadcasts, but yeah, it is Snijman. And then Jude Stewart, who's coming over from the Sim Race South Africa F3 leagues. Alistair Barnard, who's a familiar name from the Australian V8 series. John Stewart, Rob van der Heever, Peter van Rensburg, and then Morné de Plooy, who is our video editor for all of the series at Sim Experience South Africa. We're just about ready to get going with qualifying, so I'm actually going to show you what some of the work that Morné's been doing is like. So we'll send you over to an ad break and see you when qualifying is ready to resume. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching Sim Experience South Africa, and we are ready to get going with qualifying for a round of Franchorchamp here in Belgium. So all of the drivers have piled out of the pits and are ready to get going. And it's going to be interesting to see what the tire strategies are like, what the lap times are like. And for now, I'm just waiting for everyone to get settled. So I'm seeing a wide spectrum of tires. I'm seeing the C4s, which is the super soft tire. And then some drivers on the C3s, which is the soft tire. And the C2s, which is going to be the medium tire. And everyone's just busy with their outlaps. I think we do have one driver that's gotten going. Well, I think that might be Mornay de Prix. So the man out ahead will be Gerard Pretorius, who's going to take the charge. So that's through La Source. And now heading to Eau Rouge and then Radion. Of course, the left-hander being Eau Rouge, Radion up the hill. Very, very scary corner. And for these drivers, it's supposed to be a flat-out drive. If you don't take it flat out, you're going to get stuck here on the Kemmel Straight. And you're going to lose huge amounts of time. But for Gerard, things are looking quite good. He does have to speed up a little bit though. I do see drivers behind him putting in faster sectors, so he'll have to put his foot down and go for it. Although he is 1.7 seconds down on his delta, so on a personal level it is looking good for him, but we'll see where he settles in. In the meantime, some of the drivers are having a bit of a rough time on the track. I'm seeing a few crashes out on the circuit. For now, we're just looking at the survivors getting around. So it's a very long lap time. Your outlap can probably take around 2 minutes if you're not careful. And there's only 20 minutes of qualifying. We've already run through almost 4 minutes of that. And we haven't even gotten a time lap on the screen yet. So the drivers need to be careful that they don't push too hard and then get no lap time in to actually qualify with. But Gerard Pretorius is going to come across the line. On my books, it's a 144.983, and we'll just have to wait for that to pop up on the screen. But in the meantime, he's going to get going with another lap. He is quite fast in Sector 3, so that's... Also, while we're talking about the different sectors, this track is a very interesting one in regards to the different sectors. So Sectors 1 and 3 are going to be your flat-out sections, your sections where you need as little drag as possible. And then Sector 2 is a bit of a unique beast, so you can see that they're in 2/3 of the circuit on the bottom of the screen. You can see a lot of twists and turns where you might appreciate a little bit more downforce on your car. So that's going to be where Gerard is going to be heading through now. So some downforce might be beneficial, and then you need to balance that with the needs of the other two sectors where you want to be going as fast as possible. So Gerard not finding the time that he would like on this lap. I'm just sticking with him at the moment because we do want to see when that timed lap comes in. But he's currently running on the C4 compound, which is the super soft. So one of the rules that these drivers have to deal with is the fact that the tire that they qualify on is the one that they start the race on. And if you put in a very good qualifying lap with one of the softer compound tires, you might be forced to take a very early pit stop, so either force yourself into a very specific strategy, or you might not even be able to really work around your opponents in the way they would want to. So times are on the boards, and we've got on the board, and we've got Gideon Jonkers sitting with a 143.861. That is very close to Dennis Mitchell's time of 143.867. So I can imagine there's some opportunity there to go a little bit faster. Then Van Rensburg with a 144.688. Barnard another 144. Pretorius, that is Gerard Pretorius that we've been watching for a bit. He's still got that 144.770. Sorry, 144.983. And then Jude Stewart with the 145. Van Hefer 148. Another Stewart, John Stewart with the 148, and then Van Rensburg 149. The player also chiming in there with the 148, so getting his name on the board. Man that's not gotten a time in yet is the gentleman on screen right here, Maurice Kuman. So he's had his outlap and is now going to cross the line, and that's going to be a 144.193. So that's going to comfortably place him in 4th position. Above him, Corne Breed also chimed in with his time of a 144 flat. So that's going to be a very comfortable position for him. So I can imagine Dennis Mitchell is now looking at some different strategies to attack that time from Jonkers. And both of them running the C3 compound, the soft compound now. So they do want something usable for the start of the race. Dennis Mitchell now rejoining the track, heading through Rouge and Radion, and getting set for what he's probably going to hope to be one monster of a lap. We do have a few more drivers that might put in some times, so holding our breath for the SX. But at the moment, it is most of the grid on the board. And the first, I'd say, 10 positions are very close together in terms of times. So it will make for some exciting racing. Just having another look at the YouTube chat. I see Stanley Fender saying hi. And just asking where the timing tower is, and unfortunately, Stanley, that's one of the difficulties with a long circuit like this. It takes a while before the drivers start getting their times up on screen, because it's an outlap, and then our timing tower unfortunately waits an additional lap before it starts displaying qualifying times. It's normally spot on during the race, but for qualifying, some of the guys do tend to sleep a little bit. Alright, so Dennis Mitchell heading out for his lap to see what he can do in regards to what Jonkers has posted on the timing tower. So through Le Source, and now setting up for Al Rouge and Radion. Nice and solid speed through there, already gaining some time. Now through the Kemmel Straight, and this is where you just want as much speed in hand as possible. And still staying nice and positive through there. So Lecombe. And finding some massive amount of time there. Then Brussels. Brussels. Losing a little bit of time. Moving over all the way to the outside to set up for Puon. And it sounds yeah. It's a very strange name for a corner, but it is a rather odd one. and then into campus, and then Stavelot, which is going to be the corner that the track is named after, of course. And then up towards Blanchimont. Very fast corner, and that's a recurring theme with this track, is a lot of these corners are going to be extremely fast. Now that's all the way up to the bus stop chicane, and this is where you can make or break your entire lap. And 4/10 up, that's going to be a good time for Dennis Mitchell, and he's going to cross the line up into first place. So well done to Dennis Mitchell there. It's going to be up to the other drivers to now see what they can do in regards to that posted time. That was done on the C3 tyre, the soft tyre, so I can imagine that Dennis is going to try and aim to start on that. It is going to place him in a rather precarious position, because you will only be able to do between 10 to 20 laps before those tyres really start giving in. Unfortunately, Maurice Skuman, no answer yet. Corne Breed, still working on finding some time. Gideon Jonker, unfortunately stranded next to the track, so had a bit of a difficult outlap. Raymond Duggan with a big improvement on his previous lap, almost a second faster. Through the bus stop chicane, loses almost no time. And that's going to be 9/10 up. That's Duggan moving into second position. Surprising a whole lot of drivers along the way. You can see as the concentration just starts to waver after that big push they had. That was done on the C2 tyre as well, the medium tyre. So that's set him up perfectly for the rest of the race. And with C2 tyre, it's a bit easier. It's about 16 to 30 laps before you really need to consider coming in. So no time improvement for Corne Breed. Pretorius, no time improvement. As we're just jumping through all of the drivers. Peter van Rensburg with a positive delta, so he's found a little bit of an improvement along the way. And just as he heads towards the bus stop chicane, unfortunately he loses all of the time that he's gained. So if he's looking to improve, that's probably going to be exactly the spot where he has to pay a bit more attention. And chicanes are so tricky, managing how much speed you want to take in, but also carrying that speed out. Dennis Mitchell starting, sorry, not starting, but trying to find some time. I think he's in the pits, I apologize. Duggan still out on track with his outlap. And then Maurice Skuman also acquainting himself with the track. So at the moment, no one's really got an answer for the times of the leaders. You can see Skuman is also still struggling to find an improvement on his time, so he might be aiming at that time that Duggan has. It's only 14 thousandths of a second that he needs to find, but to find that consistently is quite difficult. I did see a 143.2 earlier during one of the practice sessions, but I don't know if we will be seeing that through qualifying. 5 minutes left. So if you want to get set up for a lap, it is going to be the ideal time to do so. And you need to start considering what you want to start on. So a lot of drivers still out on track trying to find the better times. The Corne Breed is getting started with another lap, and still trying to find some time. So he's found some massive amounts of time through the source. I don't know exactly how he's done that, because it did look like his speed through the corner was a lot slower. So he might have just optimized his entry and exit, but it is looking good for him at the moment. So through down the Camel Straight. And now to Lacombe. This is where the tricky second sector of the circuit is. So now it needs to manage all of that downforce and try and concentrate on getting through this as fast as possible. Now down to Pouan. Also a very fast left-hander and tricky to get to keep your foot down. And through Campus and heading up towards Stavelot. 3/10 in the hand, so it is looking good if he can maintain this, and it can be a possible pole. So fingers crossed for his spot. As Brett now heads through Blanchimont and up towards the bus stop chicane. So this is the only place where you can really lose it, and it's such a difficult few corners. But he's going to keep a hold of those 3/10 and move up into pole position. So Corne Breed with some excellent driving there. There's Mitchell on an outlap. So we'll be catching up with him a little bit later. Raymond Duggan also not finding an improvement on his previous time, but I do suspect that might have been a personal best for him right there. So it will be difficult to improve on that time. Marius Kuman almost exactly on the same time as his personal best. But he does seem to be struggling through that second sector. And this will probably also show the different setup of the car. So it is possible that he is running a lot less downforce to just be a bit more competitive on the straights. You can easily pass on the circuit, or at least it's easier than with other circuits, but you still need to consider that your overall lap time shouldn't be too slow. That being said, the 143.518 is very respectable. So if he can maintain something similar to that throughout the race, that's going to be very good for him. But Cornebreed is looking very solid with his time at the front of the board, and that was done with the C2 tyres. So he's going to be starting on the medium, so running a bit longer than the rest of the pack. Jason Macbeth also finding some time through that first sector, and now has the difficulty throughout the second sector. Unfortunately slides off the track, just losing the rear, and that is unfortunately going to put an end to his efforts. Corne Britt still improving on his times down the Camel Straight, so he definitely wants to secure that position. Both Mitchell and Duggan are in the pits, so they're not going to improve on Britt's time. Skimman, on the other hand, is going to be fighting for that time. He's right on the cusp of his previous time, going slightly into the positive, so we'll be keeping an eye on him. He's probably one of the few drivers that can really challenge Brett out in front of the grid. But he is going to have to get his foot down to get there. And unfortunately, doesn't have exactly the exit that he would want out through Stavelot. Now heading through Blanchimont, 2/10 slower than his previous lap. I'm not sure what happened with it. I think he did just jumped to the pits. Gideon Jonker is not going to be able to complete the fast lap. Pretoria is also in the pits. Brett cooling down from his lap, so it does look like he's going to have a very comfortable pole position. Actually improved his time to 143.23 in the meantime, so that's looking very good for him. Deployed, jumping into 12th position, just in the nick of time. So that's going to be your grid for the race. Corne Brett, Dennis Mitchell, Raymond Duggan, Marius Skuman, Gideon Jonker, Joshua van Rensburg, Jason Macbeth, Gerard Pretorius, Alistair Barnard, Jude Stewart, Rob van Reever, Morne Deploy, John Stewart, Peter van Rensburg, and then unfortunately Gert Snijman not able to put in a time for the board, but he will be rounding out the back of the grid. I'm going to send you to some quick advertisements as we get ready for the race itself, and then I'll pull you back in when we are ready to get to go racing. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are on the grid. We are ready to get racing. Some of the drivers are already warming up their engines. And we are set for some exciting racing here at Franchorchamp. You're watching Sim Experience South Africa, so this is our F1 Saturdays series to kind of mimic the actual F1 calendar. And this is kind of in preparation for tomorrow's racing that we'll be having from the actual Formula 1 series. Unfortunately, our cameraman is situated in a rather bad spot for the start of the race, but we'll see everyone coming through the source as we get going. So for the first little bit, why don't we sit with... Oh. We'll sit right here. So lights are ready to get going. 3 lights, 4 lights, 5, 6. And we are set. So off we go. And unfortunately we've got no view of the start of the race. It looks like everyone got away nice and cleanly, and we are going to see them. Unfortunately, 2 drivers spinning off on the side there. And that's going to be Gerard Pretorius and Joshua van Rensburg finding one another. Heading through Eau Rouge and Radion is going to be Corne Britt leading us. Dennis Mitchell coming up right behind him. Maurice Kumar not too far behind. And then Raymond Duggan bringing our 4th position. So through the Kemmel Straight. And it's looking nice and solid for Corne Britt, as he's got the other cars following right behind him. A bit of a battle between Dennis Mitchell and Maurice Kumar right behind him. And then some swapping happening in the middle of the pack. So Jason McBeath coming under pressure from the Ferrari of Gideon Jonkers right behind him as they go through campus. Looking very solid, very fast. As Raymond Duggan also starts opening up a little bit more of a gap in front of him. So most drivers getting through cleanly. And we are off racing. Alistair Barnard is getting very close to Jude Stewart right in front of him. You see a little battle there as he just almost zooms past. That's going to be McBeth and Jonkers battling out in front. So Barnard being the number 77, so Bottas's Mercedes car. As they finish their lap out in front, Corne Britt looking very solid indeed, with almost a second's lead on the rest of the pack. You can see Mitchell and Skuman trying to keep up behind him. So again, Van Rensburg and Stewart having a battle down the Kemmel Straight, trying to pull side by side, not really finding the gap. So that is going to be the result of that. So collision between Van Rensburg and Jonkers. Jonkers drops down the standings. And some of the other drivers move on up. There's Mitchell and Maurice Kumar still keeping in touch with one another. So Mitchell in the Red Bull car with the Alpine of Skuman right behind him. Mitchell, of course, a big supporter of Max Verstappen there in the number 33 car. And they're starting to close down the gap between themselves and Britt again. But it is to be expected. So it's quite interesting when you look at the tyres of the 3 front runners. Maurice Kumar with the C4 tyre, the softest of the bunch. That's going to be the C4 Super Soft. Then Dennis Mitchell with the C3 soft tyre, which will last only a smidge bit longer. And then Britt has the advantage of it, both of them with the medium tyre. We can run at least 6 laps longer. So he might opt to run at a lower fuel load, and that is Mitchell driving very slowly through the source. Skuman catching up with him. Now only 2/10 behind. Said up the hill through Radion and now down the Kemmel Straight. Skuman trying to catch the draft. And they do have DRS available anyway. Scuman swapping to the outside, swapping to the inside, attacking on the inside and making the pass stick on Mitchell. And Mitchell is going to have to find another day. Scuman now has to chase down Corne Breed. He needs to get this time on his opponent. Make use of the faster tires. So that's going to be the interesting thing. Is Breed going to run long, use the lighter weight of the emptier fuel tank and try and push his tires as far as possible, and then run a lighter stint with a softer tire for the rest of the race? Only time will tell. Further behind, Mono Deploy is actually doing really well in 8th position. And only slightly behind Alistair Barnard in front of him. So they will be battling it out in a short amount of time. You can see Monet is improving on his times. So that will be bringing that gap down very soon. Then out in front, Maurice Schumann has slowed down a little bit, not too much. Oh, and a massive loss of grip on the rear, and Dennis Mitchell is going to come on through. And that's going to be manna from heaven for the driver in the number 33. And in the meantime, I think Corne Breed is just smiling all the way. Very thankful that all of this chaos is behind him. Pretorius also looking at the back of Jared Stewart, to the Alpine and the McLaren. On the inside, we've got Pretorius looking for a possibility of an overtake, and he is going to have to fall back, unfortunately. Back behind Jared Stewart and looking for another opportunity. Behind him, Gerhard Snijman, also on the attack in the Alfa Romeo livery. Unfortunately, I can't see the number from here, but they are staying very close together. Corne Breed starting to feel the pressure from Mitchell behind him. Those C2 tires might be slowing down a little bit. And looking at the lap times, there is a bit of an advantage in... Although no, Breed has been doing very well in terms of his previous lap time. So I'm not sure how that time came to be. But he seems to be just managing that gap. Now doing the best Sector 3 time there is. So yes, I suspect that Corne Breed is just managing that gap with the drivers behind him, not pushing his tires too hard, and just utilizing that advantage that he has over his competitors. Macbeth and Duggan swapping positions there. Duggan falling way behind in the grid. A bit late to the party, so unfortunately not seeing what happened to him. Behind him, a massive battle between Reed Stewart, Gerhard Pretorius and Gerhard Snijman as they go through the Camel Straight, almost 3 wide. And that's going to be Snijman moving up ahead, or trying to. And unfortunately shoots off into the grass, into the tire barriers. And that's going to be him dropping down in the standings. So Pretorius and Stewart live for another day. Van der Rensburg in the other Alfa Romeo, now hunting down the other McLaren. So Macbeth and Van Rensburg in one hell of a battle here for 4th position. And that's going to be Van Rensburg running in number 99, Antonio Giovinazzi's car, as he follows on through. But through Blanchemont, this is a very tricky corner in some heavier cars, but for these Formula 1 cars, it's just flat out all the way into the bus stop chicane, and unfortunately losing it on the rear, and that's going to slide him into the wall. That puts it into that battle, and moves him down in the standings. So there's Mitchell taking a very adventurous line there at the top of Radeon. And just trying to catch that drop. He is a bit far behind to really be benefiting from any reduction in drag from the car in front of him. And he's going to have to try and see what he can do through the sector 2. Stewart and Pretorius making a swap in position down for 8th position. But the battle in front here is still raging on. So just also a shout out to Atinoko on the YouTube channel. Thank you for joining us. I hope you're enjoying the racing that we've currently got on screen. So now looking from the driver's perspective of Mitchell, you can see how difficult it is to see out of these cars, especially with that halo, although you do get used to it at some point. Heading up to the bus stop chicane. This is very difficult braking zone. So you can see Brett running defensively on the inside, and that does make the entry for the chicane a lot more difficult. They seem to get away quite nicely as both of the rear wings open up. So DRS rules aren't enforced at the moment, so all of the drivers have DRS available to them at any point that they wish. They just need to be very careful that they don't deploy it at a point where they still need to have the grip on their rear wheels. So Mitchell finding heaps of time up through Radeon. Now Kemal straight, and he's going on the outside of Briat, and we'll see if he's able to make the move stick at the end of the straight. Unfortunately, he needs to... Sorry, he does make the swap. And that seems to be Mitchell moving on through ahead. So Conrad Briat not able to get as much speed through Rouge and Radeon, and it comes back to bite him. So the rest of the pack spreading out nice and wide. And Briat now just needs to be careful that he doesn't lose touch with Mitchell in front of him. We'll also be keeping an eye on Briat's inputs to see whether those tyres of him are becoming a little bit more difficult to manage throughout the race. Of course, Mitchell and Skuman will drop out earlier, or have to pit earlier with their tyres, since they're running the softer compounds. I do need to see how well Briat is managing through that Rouge complex, through the bus stop chicane. And you can see he's running a lot slower than he used to. I think he's lost his confidence a little bit. Skuban is catching up behind him, so he needs to be careful. Now down through the source. Very slow to get on the throttle. Now keeping the throttle pin through a Rouge. And he's immediately improving on his time. So he might have had a bit of a safety lift earlier in the previous lap, and that might have been what cost him time down the main straight. So Snyman and Van Jever both getting past Jonkers there. Jonkers drops way behind. And now a train of cars forming here behind Snyman. As Van Jever and Deploy look at an opportunity to get past. So through the source and up towards a Rouge. Nice and stable on the throttle for that exit. So Snyman not really having trouble getting the power down. And flat they go through a Rouge and Radeon. Up towards the Camel Straight. And Snyman building a very comfortable gap for him. You can see he's just charging on ahead with Van Jever dropping behind him. So Skuman has also done well to keep himself in position. The only drivers that have really gone back to the pits has been Gideon Jonkers and Raymond Duggan. And I suspect that might have been to repair some damage that they would have occurred in some of the incidents earlier during the race. It is a bit early for an undercut, but if some of them were going to go for an undercut, that would be a very odd strategy indeed. So now nearing the 10-lap window, and this is probably going to be where the C4s are going to start letting go. So Skuman is in a little bit of trouble if he's not been managing his tires here. He could end up in the midst of some traffic if he has to pit at this exact moment. And Beard retaking the position from Skuman. And charges on ahead. So that might be the C4 starting to let go, as we're right on the cusp of Skuman's pit window. And it doesn't help you if you have the faster tire, but there's no grip left. So he'll be thinking about whether he wants to bring those tires in and swap them out for a new pair. All of the drivers do need to use two different compounds of tires. They've already started the race with the tires, and that's Skuman into the pits. So he's had enough of those tires. And we'll now see whether he's going to be able to come out ahead of Barnard. Do you think that pit stop with fueling is going to maybe be a bit much, but we'll see. So up to the source, we've got Barnard at full speed. I'm not exactly sure why Skuman is still in the pits. You can see Skuman exiting the pits right there. And he's got Duggan that tucks in behind him. Duggan, of course, losing the rear of his car through the source. They almost get too wide through a rouge, so that's very brave driving from Duggan to retake his position. Skuman, of course, on the colder tires. He doesn't have an answer for Duggan's challenge. And they are going to head on down through the Kimmel Straight. So Skuman has put on the C3s, so the soft tires. And that will probably last him about 10 to 20 laps. So that's right on the cusp of what he can carry on to the end of the race. And those tires might be screaming for dear life. He's going to have to do some time management to make sure that those tires do not die in the last 5 laps of the race. But he has a heavier car, some fresher tires. And hopefully he can stretch it on through to the end. Joshua and Rensburg now looking at the back of Macbeth. In the number 99 Alfa Romeo. So unfortunately losing a bunch of time just as we switched to him. Not exactly sure what that's about. Gerard Pretorius in the Alpine looking at the back of the McLaren of Jude Stewart heading through the bus stop chicane, and we've got Barnard heading into the pits, and unfortunately a bit of a slow bus stop chicane for Gerard Pretorius as he continues onwards. Meanwhile ahead, Corné Breed is comfortably leading the race with almost a 2-second lead, and he's going to have to really build that to be a bit more comfortable when it comes to his pit stop. Mitchell behind him still has to pit as well, but Raymond Duggan is on fresher tires, so he is currently 20.7 seconds behind. So Breed does need to get a bit of a move on unless he wants to end up fighting for positions on his second stint. So Skuman still stuck behind Duggan, and he is going to be losing a little bit of time as that gap between Mitchell and Duggan widens a little bit. Now at 21 seconds, so 23, almost 24 seconds available for Britt if he does want to make the stop. We'll see where that goes. So Duggan also on the C2 tire, so he's in it for the long run. He wants to carry it on towards the end of the race. Skuman now catching up with Duggan as they go towards La Source. Skuman trying to poke a nose on the inside, not finding an opportunity for it. And now down through Eau Rouge, and here you just need to keep your speed up. A little bit of a shallower entry. I'm not sure why Duggan is going out that wide. And that might be where he's lost his speed. So Skuman on the outside, trying to get past, and just pulling ahead at the end of the straight. So he's now got free, clean air in front of him, and he's able to charge on ahead. Dennis Mitchell in second position, almost 3 seconds behind Britt. Britt is really opening up that gap now, and just putting himself in a very secure position when he heads towards the pits. Now in the pits as well, Morijn de Plooy and Van Rensburg, Peter Van Rensburg. So they're trying to sort themselves out. A little bit of a collision between Rob van der Heever and Jude Stewart. Sorry, not Van der Heever and Jude Stewart, but a little bit of a collision for Stewart. I'm not exactly sure what that might be registered. Sorry, wrong Stewart. It's John Stewart that's had a little bit of a collision. And I think Van Rensburg dove into the pits after that contact. Corey Britt still looking very happy with his C2 tires. And you can see that massive amount of camber that he's got on the front wheels. You can see the tires. Oh, and unfortunately Britt into the wall. This is going to mix up things quite a bit. There's Mitchell charging on ahead. And this is a very sad event for Britt indeed. That's the front of his car ruined. He's going to have to repair that. That's going to be a longer pit stop. I suspect that might be the race out of his grasp. Now Mitchell trying to open up the gap between himself and Skuman. And he is nearing his pit window. Running on the C3 tires. Those tires that he's got on are a little bit past their due. Now coming up on his teammate, livery-wise. And getting on ahead of the back markers in front of him. So we'll see whether he's going to pit this lap. And that is going to be Mitchell into the pits. So those C3 tires have done well, done well in regards to the race. So we'll now be keeping an eye on this man right here, Marius Skuman, as we've got Mitchell in the pits. Skuman will probably be aware of that with his crew chief telling him that his opponent is in the pits. So we'll see where Mitchell comes out. And unfortunately, he's not going to be as close that he would want to be. And once again comes out behind Duggan. So Duggan seems to be the guy to exit out of the pits behind. But that's going to move Skuman into the collective lead. Of course, he is trying to stretch his tires quite a bit, so we'll see where that takes him. But he has a little bit of an opportunity to get going right here. Now, Macbeth into the pits, Stewart into the pits, Van Rensburg into the pits. So lots of drivers trying to split the race 50-50. and opting to put right in the middle of it. Brett's still running on those C2 tires, so he's going to probably try and stretch him out up till the 20th lap, I would presume. And we'll see where he gets with those tires. The rest of the pack still spreading out quite a bit. There is a little bit of a collection of cars in the second sector of the track. You can see here Stewart, the second car through the sector, and all of the cars within 2 seconds of one another so they could see each other. Well, the back markers there just keeping out of the way as Stewart charges on through with the number 3 car, Daniel Ricciardo's McLaren. And someone going way offline to ensure that he gets through. A nice little collection of cars. Britt out in front. Still going strong with his tires. And not losing too much time. Unfortunately, his best lap does seem to be a 1:44, so he's not been doing the fastest times possible. And I think that might be the race fuel that he's got on board. So he might have even fueled up a little bit heavier and is trying to push those tires as far as possible. He does need to be careful. Skuman is gaining on him with almost 9/10 in Skuman's advantage on the previous lap. So Skuman does know he can chase Britt down with his current tires. One thing that I didn't mention is that Mitchell came out on C2 tires, so he's also stretching out his last stint to the end of the race on the mediums. So it's going to be interesting to see where he ends up with those. Duggan in a very quiet but confident third position, and only 1.7 seconds behind Skuman in front of him. The traffic is also going to affect these cars' performance quite a bit. I think that is Jonkers they've got in the visor in front of them. Now through Eau Rouge up into Radion. And this is the one place where you do not want to be kept up by traffic, as you've got so much riding on the Camel Straight. Looking at our times, Skuman still now slightly slower than Britt in the first sector. So he needs to be careful that his tires don't drop off too much, but he is pushing as hard as he can. So only 2 drivers left to pit. Gert Snyman in position 6 still hasn't pitted, so he's going to drop back a few places. And then Britt is still stretching out his tires. We saw it in Silverstone that Britt was comfortable running his tires as far as possible. He did have a bit of an incident earlier, and he hasn't repaired his front wing. So he's comfortable with the lack of downforce. And he's able to make it work, but he is suffering a little bit from that. So he just needs to be careful that isn't costing him too much time, but a broken wing and some old tires, and he's still sitting at the front of the pack. Skuman bringing the gap down from 8 seconds to 6.3 now. And starting to make a good starting to put himself in a good position if he's running a 2-stopper race. Snyman now also joining the pits. He's decided he's had enough of his current tires. And Briat still going strong, running very wide there. Lots of understeer, so again you can see him running wide of track. He surely has to pit now. Fortunately, one of the cars off into the barriers there. We'll see who that is. Didn't exactly recognize the car. I think that might be Mornay Deploy that spun off, which is really unfortunate. So now into sector 3 for Briat, Blanchemont, and just staying flat all the way through there. Mornay's car is hurting, so expect him to come into the pits to repair those wings. And as I've suspected, Briat has had enough of his tires. So he does need to throw on a different compound. Now, Skuman charging on ahead. And I would expect Mitchell also getting ahead. So that's going to be probably an 8 to 15 second difference between the front runners and Briat. Duggan also in the pits, which is a bit of an oddity. And that's going to put him down the standings quite a bit. Pretorius and Stewart now at each other's necks as they come towards the bus stop chicane. Briat exiting the track in third position with Duggan right behind him. So 15-second gap between Skuman and Briat. And he'll be fighting to reduce that as much as possible. A little bit of a slip of the rear from Stewart. That's going to really hurt him in terms of the speed through the Eau Rouge complex. Nice little bit of curb, not too much to throw the car off. But that has regained him a little bit of time. Although there is a draft going, Pretorius is catching a bit of time. Will he be able to undo Stewart on the brakes? And no. Has to drop behind and fight through the rest of the circuit. Briat coming out of the pits with the soft C3 tyre. And that should last him for the rest of the race. Now with 19 laps of the race done and dusted. So Stewart pulling ahead of Pretorius in this second sector. So I suspect that Stewart is running a bit of a higher downforce setup. But now the big decider is going to be the third sector. So Pretorius already 2/10 behind Stewart. So very close, 1/10. And he's going to be looking at setting up some kind of attack through Blanchemont. On the outside we've got Pretorius. Stewart depending heavily on the inside, and that's a big lock-up from Pretorius. And he's going to have to fall behind Stewart again. Unfortunately, too eager on the throttle and spins off the car. Now Van Rensburg also going past him. And he's going to be kicking himself over that. Briat flying on his outlaps. You can see that Delta just dropping heaps of time. And Briat knows he needs to utilize these tires while they are fresh. He's got a lighter car. He's going to be, well, I say lighter. He's going to be lighter at this stage of the tire wear. And that is going to be in his favor a little bit, but he does need to get a move on. So 9 seconds separating himself and Mitchell. And then another 3.6 seconds if he wants to challenge Skuman. Fastest middle sector for Cornay Briat and a personal best for the first sector as well. He's really utilizing the C3 tires. Van Rensburg very close to the McLaren of Stewart. And Pretorius and Snowman right behind them. Rensburg now wanted behind, up on the inside. It has to fall back behind. So he's looking for all manners of opportunities, not finding them, but he is making Stewart very nervous in that McLaren. Overshooting on the brakes, so is he going to be able to turn in? And unfortunately, just because he's run so deep, Stewart's again able to slip out ahead. Now Snowman also pressuring from Van Rensburg as they start hunting down that McLaren. Now down through the source and onto Al Rouge. And not too much will happen here, but keep an eye on the Kemmel Straight as these drivers are within drafting range of one another. Open goes the back wing. And unfortunately not much happening, but Snowman is coming quite close to Van Rensburg here. Mitchell is slightly catching up with Skuman. As you can see, the number 33 car 1.5 seconds behind Skuman. And that is why 146 versus 144. And Briet is also just running away with a 142.939, fastest lap of the race. And extremely fast indeed. So the first driver into the 142s this evening, doing that on his second stint. Joseph van Rensburg also coming under pressure from Sneyman, as the two Alfa Romeos battle out and swap position through Blanchemont. And some locking up. Unfortunately, that's going to be the car of Sneyman, trying to recover onto the track. So just braking way too hard, and the rear start lifting off the road and just overtakes the front of the car. Deploy and Van Rensburg also having a little bit of a battle. Deploy trying to carry as much speed as possible, looking on the inside and doing a little switcheroo to get out ahead as they move on towards the bus stop chicane. So Deploy already opening up a 0.6 second gap. A little bit slower on the throttle, and Rensburg is still within striking range. And speaking of striking range, Mitchell is now almost within a second of Skuman in front of him. So Skuman's C3 tires are starting to show their age. You know, Skuman did pit fairly early. I think it was the 12th lap. And those C3 tires are only really able to last between 10 and 20 laps. They start losing a significant amount of grip after the 10 laps. And I think that's what we're seeing here. Now 0.76 seconds between them. And Skuman is going to start thinking about whether he really wants to hold on to these tires until the very end. How much of a risk is it going to be sticking with these? Mitchell running on the C2s, so he's comfortably set himself up to go towards the end of the race. I think Skuman might have found a little bit more confidence, a little bit more time as he opens up that gap again. Cara Pretorius and Jude Stewart in a nice little battle here down the Kemmel Straight. Pretorius trying to pull ahead, but not able to pull ahead of Stewart, as he tucked in behind for the second sector of the circuit. So through Brussels, or yeah, Brussels. Now heading up towards Pouan. Still maintaining that 0.2 second gap. And now through Campus. Very tricky corner. Even though they've got that tarmac on the runoff area, mistake will still cost you dearly. Stavelot, and then now towards the third sector of the circuit. Nice on the inside, looking for a position. There is not really finding the gap they need. Once again, True Blanchimont is on the inside now, swapping towards the outside for the approach on the bus stop chicane. Not happy with the line, goes on the inside, late on the brakes and overshoots everything except the main straight. So he's going to be very careful about how he rejoins that. But that was a very risky move there from Pretorius. Jude Stewart and Joshua van Rensburg profiting greatly from that move right there. Pretorius able to pull on ahead. Although it does seem like he's handing back the positions. There's Mitchell now coming up through the bus stop chicane. With Skuman right ahead of him. And sitting on board, we just want to see how well these tires are managing at the current moment. You can see some very fast upshifts. So probably trying to keep that tire spin as well managed as possible. And now down the Camel Straight. And Skuma's just able to maintain that gap on the head, so Mitchell doesn't really have the advantage of the draft. And he has a car charging up behind him. With Corne Breed, a man on a mission. 3 laps left in this race. So not much time for him to do something. And he's going to have to hope for a mistake from his opponents. And we'll see how close to the wire that gets near the end of the race. But Brett's been doing very well with his tire management throughout the stint. Leaning towards the longer stints and able to do qualifying on that C2 tire. Really has opened up the game for himself in terms of strategy. And if he didn't have that crash earlier in the race, he would have most definitely been leading right about now. Meyer is now catching up with Skuman. Skuman with a very slow second sector. And an equally slow second sector, so somewhere he's lost a bit of confidence. You can see Corne Beard also getting past the back markers now. In the view there at the top of the hill. And I think seeing his opponents is just going to drive a little bit more energy into him as we get going with these last few laps. So of course we'll be pushing as hard as possible. So through Brussels, and Mitchell not really doing that well in terms of his previous times during this session. About a second slower than some of his previous times. But he's still catching up with Skuman ahead of him. Skuman a second slower on his previous Mitchell a second slower on his previous lap, and that's why I got so confused. So Mitchell and Skuman making the swap, and Breed jumping into the pits. So I'm not sure what that is about. This close to the end of the race. So Mitchell coming through that rather unscathed. I do apologize, I was looking at my timing screens when that happened. And Mitchell almost securing victory just through the error of his opponents. As we go into the last few laps of the race. Looking at some of the other drivers. Keon Jorgen unfortunately having a bit of a rough start to the first part of the race, and that has affected him for the remainder of it. This is fighting for this 10th position. Britt coming out behind Stewart's own 9th position. And he's back onto the C2 tires, so he's probably not configured his pressures for the second set of tires. Seeing that he now goes back towards the slower tires, but he might be a bit happier now. On the front, Mitchell still looking very strong. And we've only got 2 laps left, or 1.5 by the looks of things. And this is the very important thing with these races, is you do need to keep as consistent as you can possibly keep in between. So onto the final lap, Mitchell with a 144.9, and he only really needs to get across the line. He doesn't have to worry too much about Skuman. The only person that can really ruin his race from here on out is himself. So he needs to concentrate and focus as hard as he possibly can. So on board for the last portion of this race. And now heading through the second sector, the slower sector on the track. I can see just how wide the car is starting to track out of the corners as his tires are nearing the end of their life. They still were able to keep his foot flat through on, so not hurting his time too much. Now through campus, sorry, not campus, Stavelot, and heading up to Blanchemont. Just flat all the way. I can imagine his right foot is cramping by the end of this race. And into the bus stop chicane. As he keeps the rear in check and crosses the line as your race winner. There's Mitchell bringing it home in the final stages of this race. Cara Pretorius has kept within sight of the opponent in front of him. Unfortunately, doesn't really have too much to act upon, so he's hoping for an error from his opponent. Otherwise, this is going to be how the cookie crumbles. So I just need to take a quick note of our winners. As Skuman okay, so Mitchell, Skuman, Duggan 1, 2 and 3, and then Barnard, Macbeth. Barnard kind of a silent 4th position. And then Macbeth 5th. Van der Rensburg. And unfortunately, Carapur is nearly spinning out the rear of his car. You can see he's just struggling to keep that going. crosses the line in 7th position. And the man that's going to be kicking himself is going to be Corne Briet. He's done so well throughout the race. And had to take that third pit stop. The rest of the pack doing very well. So I'm going to just quickly run through everyone. So your race finishers are Mitchell Skuman, Duggan, Barnard, Macbeth, Van Reesburg, Pretorius, Stewart, Breed, Jonkers, Van Hever, and so forth. So I'll quickly see if I can fetch a few of the drivers for us to have a bit of a chat with. Then we'll see if we can have some interviews. So I'll be with you in a second. So just stay with me right here as I start to fetch everyone. I'll give you a bit of an advertisement in the meantime. And then we'll be back quite soon. Welcome back, everyone. So I've gotten some of the drivers rounded up for some interviews, and in the studio with me, I've got our race winner. So Dennis Mitchell, congratulations on the race win, and that must have been a very tense race right up to the last few laps. I think lap 25 might have been a bit of a decider in this, but just talk us through the race and kind of what you were strategizing and how that turned out for you at the end.
Yeah, it was quite an eventful race. I went with the middle compound tire, so not the softest but not the hardest to start on, so I had to qualify on that. And then went for the hardest tire at the end. But the hardest tire, as it was wearing, was sliding around a lot. And at one point also there was a slight service sort of glitch, and I went off, I hit the wall, and I had to assess the car damage, and then I ended up down to third after that. So I was thinking, oh my boy, is this going to be the end of it? And ended up actually getting back into first. So that was quite an eventful race, but quite fun.
Definitely seemed like quite a bit of fun. And then, I saw Brett was really challenging you guys in terms of him running a longer strategy. I don't know how he was able to do it, but he qualified on the C2 tires, and actually seemed to have a bit of a preference for them, since he had to take a third pit stop and then just swapped on back to the C2s. So I'm not exactly sure what happened to him right at the end of the race. I didn't have my screen on him at the time, but it does seem like he was able to really pressure you guys. I don't know how aware were you of him kind of charging from behind with the pressure tires at the closing stages of the race.
Well, my crew chief was telling me that he was setting fastest lap times. So I knew he was on a good pace. So I was constantly watching my mirrors. I never saw him, thankfully. but my times were probably about 2 or 3 seconds off with the tyres worn at the end and being on hard compound. And he was sort of setting qualifying pace at the end. But then I heard he had 2 incidents in the last stint of the race as well, so I knew he had fallen back a bit.
Yeah, he did have that one crash with the wall, which unfortunately set his entire strategy off track a little bit. So I think you and Skuman might have breathed a sigh of relief when you saw that happen. So just another quick question. So it's probably very obvious from the car livery that you chose, but in terms of Sunday's race, who are you supporting? And then any shout outs from your side in terms of the broader
Yes,
community?
yes, I'll definitely be supporting Verstappen. I think he's the best driver in the field at the moment. So we'd like to see him get a good result. And in terms of shout-outs, I'd like to say thank you to my wife for letting me race and for supporting me, and to all the guys that helped make this possible, yourself, Monet, and all the guys that entered.
That is very important indeed. It's always nice when the wives do allow us to have a little bit of fun. It's not always that exciting for them, but we do appreciate that quite a bit.
Indeed.
Thank you so much for your time, Dennis. And then I'll be putting in some of the other guys, so I'll be muting
I
us.
see Mario Skuman is now available for chat as well.
Can you maybe go and pull in while I pull some of the other guys in? Or maybe
All right,
just say in the general chat for someone to jump into the Div2 chat, and I'll get them
all right.
going. Okay, so we're just rounding up some drivers in the meantime, and then I'll be back with you in a few seconds. Welcome back, everyone. So I've got Maurice Skuman here with me. He was one of the other front runners battling it out throughout the race. And I do have to ask you, Maurice, how was that race for you? All from the get-go, you were on the softer tires, so maybe had a bit of an easier start, but then you had your work cut out for you for the rest of the race. What were you thinking throughout the race, and how was that for you?
Well, first of all, I had a different plan in mind, but yeah, I messed it up at the end there when I had that little spin. The tires were still fine, temperatures were still fine. I think my nerves must have gotten to me. But yeah, I went for the first shorter stint because I never did a lot of laps with the soft tire to see how long the wear would go. So initially, when I started the race, I decided to do a short stint on the super softs, and then a longer stint on the mediums or the soft tires in this case. But yeah, field strategy and everything was a bit stressful in the beginning because when we loaded to the grid, none of our setups had pit strategies on them. Although we did test it during qualifying and practice, the setup did have it installed or set up, but somehow there's a glitch or something because it just disappeared. So everybody was scrambling and trying to set everything the way it's supposed to be. And I think some of us messed up the tire temps as well, which led to a bit of hot front tires. But yeah, other than that, I didn't expect to actually catch Dennis and Cornet by the pit stop because I messed up in the beginning as well. Out of corner one, the exit, I messed up big time there. And I lost a lot of places there or a lot of time there. So I had to catch up most of the race. I didn't expect to undercut them that bad during the pit stops, which was a surprise.
Yeah, I do think you opted for a bit of an earlier stop, if I remember correctly.
Correct, yeah.
And I was a bit curious about how your tires were going to be at the end of the race because it seemed like you were just at the limit of what the tires would be able to handle near the end of the race. So did they feel like they were letting go, or was it just a case of just trying to push very hard?
to be honest, in that fast corner where I lost it at the end, I think the tires definitely lost a bit of grip. Maybe a bit of degradation or something, because I ran maximum camber, which is part of my driving style. I actually do it in all my sim races, racing setups. So I think that might have hurt me in the long run. I didn't expect it to go off like that all of a sudden, but I guess it makes it a bit more realistic then.
Yeah, no, it most certainly does. And then I know the answer to this, but I do want to see what you personally say about it. So, any favorites for the race tomorrow, and then any shout outs from your side?
Definitely Max Verstappen, I hope. And yeah, just shout out to everybody watching and supporting. You guys are doing a good job hosting the server. We've been longing for these hybrid cars for a very long time. So thanks to Dennis and Mornay for setting it up. We really appreciate it. That's it.
Yeah, they've been doing us a huge favor. So I'm just going to mute your mic so you can go and rejoin the guys just chatting about the rest of the stuff. For the spectators out there, I'm just going to see if I can get one last interview for you, and then we will be signing off for the evening, and then you can go watch some qualifying highlights. And if you haven't watched qualifying, I most certainly recommend that you do go and watch it before you even see any form of social media. So I'll be back in a second and see if I can get one last interview. Welcome back, everyone. So I've got Alistair Barnard with me in this in the studio. He was kind of a bit of a dark horse throughout the race, kind of kept in the background. So it's going to be interesting to get his whole perspective on it. So, Alistair, just welcome and then congratulations on the fourth position.
Thank you. Wasn't quite the podium, but close enough.
You did.
Considering I didn't put in too much practice for the race.
You did quite sneak it from behind. Like, you weren't involved in any of the major battles, and then just managed to kind of move your way up the grid. Was there any specific strategy towards it, or were you just in the right place at the right time?
Yeah, no, I just managed to sort of dodge some issues at the start of the race. I think I mistakenly started on the super soft tire because I set my quali lap on that tire, which I think was a bit of a mistake. I should have chosen the C3 maybe, because that would have given me a bit more legs, because I had to put quite early. I was having a nice little battle with Raymond. I was, well, not battle, but I was getting closer to him, and it seemed like we were gonna have a nice little battle. But then I had to dive into the pits. So yeah, I had a pretty quiet race otherwise after that. Once I came out of the pits, that was pretty much it. I think there was a 15-second gap to the guy in front of me and a 15-second gap, give or take, to the guy behind me. So yeah, pretty lonely race otherwise. But yeah, happy for the fourth.
And then I've mentioned this on stream as well, but I know, or we know you from the V8 series, and now of course you're racing in the F1s as well. Any preference towards the style of car that you like to drive? I know these downforce cars are a bit of a different story when it comes to the fast turns, especially here at Spa. Or do you prefer just relying on the mechanical grip that you've got in those V8s?
Well, the racing, of course, is going to be a bit tighter with the V8s. Just pace wise. I think the F1s, always tend to have bit of a bigger gap. between the cars. Different pace of the guys. You got really quick guys up at the front. You got mid-tier guys like me in the middle, and then you got the slow guys behind that. So there's always going to be a bit of a gap. So I would say I prefer the V8s, but I mean, no, the F1's always good fun. Hey, I mean, nothing beats that super fast speed.
Definitely agree with you. And then just one last thing. I'm assuming you're also watching tomorrow afternoon. Any specific driver that you think is going to do really well tomorrow? And then any shout outs?
Not particularly. I didn't actually watch the qualifying. I heard Russell got second, so sure, that should be a bit of a banger to watch. Hopefully, there's going to be some rain.
It's definitely a interesting one to watch, and they've had quite a bit of rain, so it's going to be interesting to see if the track's got rain tomorrow. And then any shout outs for the broader community or people that have been supporting you?
No, not well. Yeah, thanks for anyone who does support me. Yeah, no, I'm enjoying the series all of the series I'm taking part in. We've got the MX5 Cup tomorrow as well, which is also good fun. Very tight racing. So yeah, if anyone wants to get involved, they must join Sim Experience. It's a lot of fun.
Definitely agree with you right there. Thank you so much for your time. I'm just going to mute so that you can leave comfortably. And then I do have one last driver that's been sitting here in the background. So I'll just quickly see if he's able to unmute himself. And then we'll probably be done with the interviews. So, Mornay, welcome. You've been quite in the background in the past while, but you've been doing
You mean in the chat? You mean the chat and in the race?
Yeah, but I do think with good reason. You've been doing a lot of video work for us, and it's been really nice, and we appreciate it quite a bit. So I just want to kind of ask a few questions in terms of getting used to the circuit and getting up to speed. How was it trying to approach that limit of the car and trying to get a feel for things as you were getting your feet wet with the race itself?
Well, I did have run about 4 or 5 laps practice during the week. Well, we couldn't really call it practice, but just to kind of get a feel for the car. But during the race, I think Dennis tried to share a setup with me, and it just felt a little too loose. Obviously, I need to get used to the car a little bit more, and so I just stuck with the default setup. I think I lowered the rear wing and the front wing by about 5 degrees, and then just went for it, and then try to get a feel for it during the race. And then I kind of, every time I felt like I got going, I'd have a little bit of a spin, and then I'd fall back a couple of positions and then try and fight back, and then I caught back up, and then just the same thing happened again. But I mean, it was good fun. Like, I mean, even though I don't really get time to kind of join the practice sessions and things like that, it's always good fun just to drive and kind of work your way up the order.
Definitely agree. It's sometimes just getting that race where you get your head down and just charge on ahead. It's quite the enjoyable race. And then from your side, any favorites for tomorrow's race and any shout outs from your side?
No, I was just gonna say I was actually listening to Alistair when you asked him the same question about shout outs, and I just thought it was pretty funny that he said, no, not really. And then anyone who's supporting me, to those guys. So that was quite funny. I just wanted to say that, but I don't really particularly have anyone either. Just obviously to everyone that joins every week, and we appreciate the support, and we're growing slowly and getting there. So I just want to say thanks to everyone that has joined and that is sticking with us. We know, growing pains, it's a thing. It's a real thing. So just wanted to say thank you to those guys, and then to everyone who watches week in and week out. And tomorrow's race, the MX5s, again, not done much practice there, but I will try and do some tomorrow. And it's always seems to be Dennis up at the front, so I'm probably gonna go with Dennis for the win tomorrow.
He's definitely one of the strongest drivers out front, so it's going to be interesting to see how the races unfold. But
Yeah.
definitely agree with you there. And then in terms of the F1 race, because I think you might have misunderstood me, any preference there for one of those drivers?
Oh, you mean the real F1 race?
Yeah, sorry, I might have not made it as clear.
Yeah, no worries. You know, again, like Alistair said, Russell, man, what a qualifying for him. So he's actually always been one of my favorite drivers, but I'm actually going for a kind of a dark horse tomorrow for Norris. I'm really thinking that tomorrow could be good for him to win. But obviously, like always, my favorite has to be Verstappen. So I think I'm probably going to go with Verstappen.
I definitely agree with a whole bunch of you guys. I'm very much. This is very much a Red Bull Racing household. And the scary part is my wife is actually the biggest fan here, which is quite impressive from her side. But then for everyone that's been watching, thank you so much for sticking with us all this time. Sorry for the bit of a hiccup at the start. We do have to deal with a very old simulator, so it does make things a little bit more difficult. And as Mornay says, we do have a few little growing pains. But next up, we are racing at the Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort. It's going to be a bit more of a high downforce circuit, so it's going to be very interesting. Join us on the 1st of September for that. And then, of course, tomorrow we've got the MX-5s, which is also going to be interesting. You can check this out in the Discord link in the description, and you can get involved there with the community. So, yeah, hope to see everyone there. For everyone that's in the YouTube chat, thank you so much. I see there's been a lot going on there. Unfortunately, I've not been able to keep on up throughout the race, but thank you so much for everyone that were involved there. For myself, Johan Karinas, thank you very much. Hope you have an amazing night, and